Namaskar and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the ASEAN-India Summit. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee, who is here with us in the studio, consulting editor with the Business Standard. Welcome, Shubhmoy. We're also joined by former Ambassador Anil Wadhwa and Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, foreign affairs expert as well. They're joining us. Let me first bring in, Dr. Chaulia here as well. Dr. Chaulia, all these contours of, or various aspects of this relationship between ASEAN nations and India, ASEAN as a bloc, be it cyber security, maritime security, counter-terrorism efforts, digital economy as well, and trade and commerce, which Mr. Wadhwa was also referring to. There's one thing which both sides have reiterated time and again, that is ASEAN centrality. So if you could, throw some more light on what exactly do we mean by ASEAN centrality, and then how is that going to happen?
Vishal, ASEAN centrality is a reference to the regional architecture, placing ASEAN and ASEAN's interests and will in the middle, meaning that ASEAN is a grouping of 10 countries of what can be called middle and small powers, and they have strength in numbers, 10 of them coming together to form a common market and to integrate among themselves. So the idea is that there are bigger players in the region. China is the biggest power. Japan is relatively smaller. United States is a so-called resident power in the Indo-Pacific, and there are new emerging players like India also in this. But the idea is that ASEAN is really geographically and in terms of the regional architecture for integration, it is the key. And we have to strengthen the unity of ASEAN. That's what Prime Minister Modi and we have been repeatedly saying as part of our Act East policy. ASEAN is the building block. And ASEAN, if it is divided and is broken up, Ambassador Wadhwa was saying that, Chinese, for example, are trying to manipulate and to keep ASEAN weak. And in the process, what they do is they play off one subgroup against another subgroup within the 10 countries. So there's no common position of ASEAN on anything, especially on security issues. And that's how the Chinese are able to try and expand their hegemony. So I think we are saying that we should strengthen the regional integration mechanisms. We must not let them be overridden by great powers.
Okay.
I think that's the main message. And of course, ASEAN has its own vision for the Indo-Pacific. And ASEAN vision says sovereignty, territorial integrity, rules-based order, international rule of law, UNCLOS, the law of the sea, all these must be respected.
Okay.
So on all these issues, when we say ASEAN centrality, it means that their positive vision for equal treatment by the big powers must be respected. India stands for equality of all. In fact, Prime Minister Modi laid out our vision in the Shangri-La dialogue a few years ago in Singapore, saying that irrespective of size and power, we believe in equality of all countries, especially small and middle countries of ASEAN. So I think that's where I think we are coming in to try and be a balancing force. Otherwise, ASEAN can be easily exploited, divided, or even in the past during Cold War period, they were even occupied and dominated by other great powers. And what we want is ASEAN vision and centrality to come forward so that these countries, independent-minded countries, can form a bloc and bring everybody together. They want an inclusive architecture, not an exclusive one or one which is based on might is right. ASEAN does not want might is right. ASEAN wants a democratic regional order, and that's what we are supporting when we say ASEAN-centric vision for Indo-Pacific.
Okay. Dr. Chaulia, the overall issue of how to go about in Indo-Pacific and then, focus on all those aspects which have been time and again reiterated by both sides in terms of following the rules, the order, the international order, ensuring regional security as well, finding peaceful ways, and including in all that is the Chinese angle as well. And as Mr. Wadhwa was pointing out, ASEAN nations would have their own way of looking at it, and we have our own.
Yeah, but there is convergence, Vishal, because first of all, ASEAN is not averse to using the term Indo-Pacific. The Chinese are still calling it Asia-Pacific. They don't even accept that India should play any role in this region. So ASEAN is clear that they want India to play a bigger role and to cooperate with them through defense diplomacy, through joint exercises. We have done bilateral and also even trilateral naval exercises with ASEAN member countries. And there was at the time even a talk that Vietnam might be brought in, or Indonesia, into the Quad Plus formation. Now that is where ASEAN will be a little bit cautious and wary because of the economic interdependence or even dependence on China. And secondly, they often believe that if they provoke China too much, then the Chinese may actually turn up the heat on them even more in South China Sea disputes, in the maritime spaces which China has occupied and now built military bases, and even on Taiwan. So I think they want to tread little carefully on the Quad, and they have not formally shown interest in joining the Quad, which is Australia, Japan, India, and the US. But if you look at the interoperability, it is increasing, and at the level of militaries, and the defense ministers level meeting we are doing with all 10 ASEAN countries at one time as very significant developments, part of this comprehensive strategic partnership, the new terminology we are using, and also joint maritime exercises with all 10 countries at one time.
Okay.
This has not been done before. We have done 2 or 3 at a time. So I think this is going to send a clear strategic signal. Our naval capabilities are slowly enhancing, and we operate more in the eastern side of the Indian Ocean up to the Straits of Malacca. And beyond the Straits of Malacca, what we call the Western Pacific. That's where the US and Australia and Japan are bigger players. But we would like ultimately to have a role even in the further towards the Pacific. That's how we realize the Indo-Pacific. So I think ASEAN countries, they welcome it. They want India, for example, Vietnam, they want India to take more and more oil exploration blocks in the contested waters so that it sends a message to the Chinese that their sovereignty claims are not at all recognized by any major player. So I think there are ways, subtle means by which they want India to become a bigger player in supply chain. In the China plus one strategy, where companies are trying to diversify away from dependence on mainland China. A lot of Southeast Asian countries and Japan and all of them want India to host. You saw the Foxconn investment in Gujarat, $19 billion plus for semiconductors, for example. So a lot of countries in Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia want India to come in a way that balances out China, but they will not want to provoke and anger China right now because they believe they don't yet have the alternatives to fall back on. And US security umbrella, US credibility is low in Asia. It started with the Trump administration. Even now, although there are many ASEAN countries have formal alliances, for example, Philippines is a formal ally of the US, but they can't depend on them. If China is pushing them hard, they're not sure if the US will really come to the rescue. That's where India and a group of other countries, if you create a regional deterrence mechanism, ultimately I think that is what ASEAN wants, in a soft way, a soft counterbalancing of China, not a hard balancing, and that is work in progress.
Thank you so much, Shubhmoy, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, and Dr. Sreeram Chaulia as well for sharing your views and insights.